Okay, here's a quick little interesting game. Check it out. He wants to play a Benoni, but I don't play a Benoni. But I do play a Smith-Morra Gambit for the Sicilian defense. He's like, okay, now it's in the book. You can play, white can play d5 for a slight advantage right from the opening on move 3. But let's go for the whole thing. He agrees. Fantastic. One more transpositional chance, and bingo, he takes it. Fantastic. Knight f6, very good. Get your pieces out on good squares. Castle. Don't get crazy. Also, bishop f4 is good. I'm going to stick the queen to guard the e-pawn, and the rook on f1 will go to d1 to put pressure down the center file. Now he's going to let me play knight to d6 apparently. If he played d5, I'd play bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, e takes d, e takes d, and then just rook takes. I have 3 attackers on d5. He has 2 defenders plus a knight that will be ripped off immediately. So he only has 2 defenders. That's how you properly count this. You don't say there's 3 defenders because that knight is only there until he plays d5, and then boom, he's gone. And he goes from 3 defenders, knight, pawn, and queen to 2 in the blink of an eye, as they say. So he cannot play d5. But if you're going to put your rook there, I'm going to jump in the hole. So the rabbit goes down the hole, bishop kills him, rook takes over. And the bishop goes and backs him up from g3. So you have a terrific bind for the cost of a pawn. Good deal. He can take the bishop. There's nothing I could do. Don't matter. I'm going to recapture it with the h-pawn anyway. Pile in the center. Maximize the bind and the pin. This is a game in 3 minutes. The pressure is going to mount rather quickly psychologically. Actually hit the wrong button. Let's go back here. There we go. Chop suey of the bishop. All right, well, guess what? I already said h takes g3 was coming. Kick the pawns together. Also, it makes an automatic exit hole for the king. Besides, f takes g3 would just shatter your own pawns and make your king defense inferior. So, you know, don't destroy your own house. Kind of basic. Now he slips up. He probably had to play queen c7, and then maybe rook a to either c8 or d8, depending on what he was going to do. But bishop c8, that's not it. You know, that pawn really cannot be held. And trying to hold it is the worst thing you could do, which is what he did, and you'll see how it goes bad. Knight to b8 also loses. There's just no way you're going to hold this pawn. Let white take it. Get your pieces in this kind of position. Trade that backward pawn for activity of pieces. No question. So maybe rook c8. Oh, I'm sorry, rook to b8 would be fine. Because if I take it, the queen's going to have to move to like queen to f6 is fine. And that way the b8 rook would guard that bishop. So he sees bad things are happening. So bishop c8. Now, see if you can figure out what white should play after bishop to c8. Pause the video if you need to. And we're back. So, hopefully you saw this move. Bam. Oh, the pin is just killer. So that's what you learn from this game. When you have these horribly backwards pawns, it's not worth holding on to the pawn. Get your pieces active and off the back rank. Let the pawn go and try not to get stuck on holding it. He got stuck on holding it, and you see it's just going to destroy his entire game. Now he plays queen f6. Hey, I'm going to go right back. I got a piece for nothing. You know, because of the pressure. The fast time control with the hideous pressure. Now he's threatening to play bishop to c6, and that wouldn't be that great for me, so hey, I'm greedy. I'll take it. But first we're going to shove that e5 pawn up there and trap his queen. His queen is basically now trapped on the right side of the board. So he's moving without any... He's got no futures at all. That pawn's not going anywhere. He cannot hold it. So all I did was maneuver my pieces around to bully his queen. And now his queen is isolated on h5, doing absolutely nothing. The best the best piece he has in his army, and he can't do a thing with it. So finally, rook a c8 as he needs to, but 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4. He's got a pawn for a piece, and that pawn doesn't last. Okay. Now, I can just continue the bullying. There's nothing he could do. That's the only square. So chop it off. His pawns are just irrevocably wrecked. And he just literally has nothing. The rook penetrated to the 7th rank. Now I chopped a pawn, and I'm going to double up on the 7th. You know, he needed to play rook e to c8. You know, to do something. I don't know, man. Try to stop those rooks. What he did, you know, was not good. Let's look back. Yeah, I took the pawn. He needs to play... Oh, man, he can't even play it. He's screwed. There's no way he can stop my rooks. You know, I don't think I had to take... I don't even think I had to play b3. I think I could have just played rook on d to d7, but I was just being safe. When I was looking at this, I'm like, oh my god, dude, I could have been here one move sooner. There's nothing he could do. This is, you see the difference. If I would have captured f takes g3, he gets counterplay by doubling and then chop suey. But since that h pawn is not there and the f pawn is there, his chop suey is too slow. I'll checkmate him first, so he can't do it. Check. Go there. Check again. I'm setting him up for what you see coming. Now, see what you would do here as white, and pause the video. And we're back again. What did you play? Knight to d4 is crushing. There's literally nothing he could do. That e-pawn is gone, and he's just going to get straight out mated. There's nothing. He can check me one time. I move to h2. He lines up. It doesn't matter. He'd have to play like 2 or 3 moves in a row to have a shot. There's just nothing he could do. There's just nothing you can do. Check. Now you see what's happening. It doesn't matter where he goes. So, whatever. And that is mate right there. Now, what happens is, if you look at it, when I asked you about knight to d4, it's not accurate, but you know, rook to g8 would win, but it'd be just very much slower. It lets him out of his deal. When I realized that my knight was going to move at will and essentially checkmate him, he was dust. But, you know, this makes it way harder because he's going to take your a2 pawn. And either he goes to a6 to guard it, or he futilely goes to b2, and then you just take it, and then goodbye Charlie again. It doesn't really matter. This does just win. This is just an abomination of chess here. There's nothing he could do. He can't get there in time. And now your rook's got to move. He's like, okay, check. I go here. He can do nothing. Well, you can take my f pawn. Okay, I'll give you that. Take my f pawn. Okay, whatever. I take yours, you take mine, but I'm going to make a queen, dude. There's just nothing you could do. There's literally nothing that he could do to stop me from queening this pawn at some point. The rule, put the rook behind the passed pawn, is like, well, okay, good luck with that. The knight guards this square, he can't check me. Ugh, it's just awful. This is just awful. I mean, realistically, take this with the, oh man, take it with the rook. You still can't even take my pawn, it's nasty. I mean, you know, whatever, dude. It's awful. You feel sorry for the guy, really. Man. Check. There's just nothing he could do. Let him take it. I mean, it's so bad. But there's nothing he could do. I mean, you feel sorry for, look at this. This is terrible. Okay, so that was really awful. You know, even the incorrect move of a rook to the back, rook to the 8th rank at check, and he trades rooks, it's still awful. It doesn't matter. You know, this was because he made the mistake of trying to hold that backwards garbage pawn with rook to with bishop to c8. And there's, oh man, it's just so bad. So hopefully this is the lesson you should learn from this position, or this game, was that black had that backwards pawn, you know, and he should have played, well, you can't play that. You got to play like queen f6. I mean, you know, he's got to play queen f6. Let the pawn go. There's nothing you could do. If this is what happens, let it go. You know, coordinate your guys is the key. You got to coordinate your men. At least this way, you know, he's got a fighting game. The material is even, and he's certainly alive here and kicking. But holding the extra pawn, danger. It's very dangerous, and you saw that happen. But he could have had a decent game, but he just, you know, has to know. He failed to learn the lesson, and I'm presenting it here for you so you won't fail. That when you see this, you're like, oh man, you're in that, took the Gambit pawn, and it's not going well. And if it's not going well, jettison the pawn. That's what this game teaches. If you play the perfect moves like a grandmaster, well then that's fine. But he did not. He could have played knight to e8. Well, that's the move the computer recommended. Which goes back to white would play bishop to g3. And I think he's supposed to play rook to c8. I mean, it's not terrible. No, he didn't even have to play rook to c8. He could just play a6 if he wanted to. Probably the smartest move is to play a6. Then, you know, get this garbage out of his face. Can't really say I'd recommend bishop takes, but because you're just putting the rook up there. You know, bishop takes d6 would be a hideous mistake. Absolutely horrible. Because you're getting the rook from d1 to d6 on a recapture, which is where one of the places he would like to go. White needs to keep a piece on d6 because the bind is just shutting down the pieces. So this, you know, would be a horrible move strategically because it's just super pain in the butt. So I mean, he could do, you know, whatever, say that, which is all, you know, all good. Got to be careful. I mean, I guess there's no way to keep that bishop. You got to keep the pressure here. You know, he could technically play this move, but he's asking for trouble. Knight takes bishop, queen takes knight. I don't know. And then, well, now if rook to c8, we're going to chop this off. He could play this move, but, you know, now, once again, bad juju is happening. So, and then knight e5 is going to be a real pain of a move. Because now I'm threatening the b pawn. So you really see he can't really hold, he can't hold this pawn with anything other than superior, and I mean computer precise moves. And who's a computer? Nobody. So, you know, he hasn't stopped knight e5. And you see the knight is just threatening to just chop it off. Knight chops, bishop chops, rook chops, triple on the file. Bad news for you. Okay, so that's bad. Can't stop knight e5. Or he can stop knight e5. And we just take this off here. Bing, bing, bing. You know, pretty good. Rook takes is probably better. There's no reason to trade the queens unless you're going to get something for it. So now the pawn, we've got the pawn back. And so he's, you know, we're threatening to jump with the queen right into d6. This is really bad. So that's the lesson. So hopefully this helped you out and will help you out in the future. You guys know what to do. Talk to you later.